Hi, today on the podcast, I'm talking to Julie Johnson, who's the founder of JMJ Studios, which is an all-female boutique architecture firm, a full-service architecture firm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Hi, Julie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So today we're just going to talk about, you as an architect. What does that mean? What is your role? What's the process? And, hopefully get some tips out of it for homeowners as they try to navigate this process. So we'll start with an easy one. Just give me a little bit about your background. Like, how did you end up where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from a little town called Centerville, Ohio, and I entered university as a French major, business and French. And I took my first class in Econ 101, and I went home in tears, just saying, this is not for me. And so I went to the career counselor, actually, and she said, well, you're really strong in math, and you're very artistic, and have you ever thought about of being an architect? And I said, well, no, not really one time. And then I called my parents and I told them the news, and my dad said, don't do it. You're not going to make any money. You're going to work really hard and you're going to be broke. This is a terrible decision. Stay with business. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I was pretty pig-headed and decided to transfer into the architecture school kind of midstream. And it was just instantly, I kind of knew I found my people. And really, that was kind of the beginning of it. It's just sort of this amorphous of different skills that I'd accumulated, and one very wise person thought that this would be a good fit for me in my life.
It's amazing how such random things can have such a massive effect on our lives, and we don't really realize it at the time.
100%. 100%.
So did you work for a big firm or a firm, or what did you do after you graduated? And do you have a master's as well?
Ironically, I moved to California to get into the university, to UC Berkeley. I came here to apply to graduate school. And while I was kind of working on my GRE and kind of getting my test taken care of, I took a job as an interior designer. Actually, I was doing corporate interiors at a company called IA in San Francisco. And it was right in the late 90s in the tech boom in the city. So we couldn't hire people fast enough. Warm bodies and chairs were sort of sufficient. I mean, there was so much work to be had around the world, really. I was doing work in Sao Paulo and London, and it was just really, really a boom time. And then I worked really hard to apply to get into Berkeley, promptly got denied, and then said to myself, well, in California, you actually don't have to go to grad school to be licensed. You just need to adopt, I think it was 5 or 7 years of experience. So I decided that if I wasn't going to go to Berkeley, I was just going to plow forward and keep working, gain experience. And the reality is, grad school is quite expensive. I wasn't making a ton of money, and it was sort of a rational decision too. It worked out. You just have to, kind of keep being tenacious and getting the experience you need and ask lots of questions. So I ended up getting licensed when I was 32. And I was in a larger firm. I did interiors for about 5 years, and then I transitioned to commercial architecture. And that was the point in my career where I almost gave up, honestly. It's very hard to transition to, interior design planning to high-rise construction. I was crying daily. It was just a real rough spot in my career, but it's also one of those jobs where the only way forward is through, and you learn by doing and messing up and having patient bosses. And so really for that next 5 years was just a grind. I was studying at night and learning as much as I could on the job, and eventually got my own project in Oakland, which is really the beginning of my confidence as a designer and as a detailer and communicator and just business person, frankly, and working with developers directly. And I was really grateful for that opportunity because it kind of has been the bedrock of what I've been doing.
And now you have your own firm. How long have you had that firm?
Yeah, so we've been in business. I think of it in terms of my children. So my daughter will be 10. So 9.5 years now. It'll be 10 years the end of the summer. And yeah, it's great. We've been as much as 4 people. We're kind of 2 now full time, and we just sort of ebb and flow. We're an all-female firm. I have quite a few contacts of, frankly, of women I used to work with that are now stay-at-home moms, and I've kind of called some of them from the benches to contribute, on and off over the years. And, we try to keep it family-oriented, and we just like to do really good work without the frills of some kind of corporate glossy brochure of office environment. So we're pretty happy with where we're at.
That's great. You're an architect, but I also just heard you use the term designer. So what is the difference, if there is one?
Architects make less money.
And probably have more schooling or more technical schooling, I guess, since you didn't have to go as far as the master's for certification. But seriously, what is because some people say, oh, I need an architect for my job. And some people say, well, I have a designer for my job. So what is the difference?
So it's kind of the elephant in the room, right? So an architect obviously goes to school for a much longer period of time and is held to a standard defined by, in my case, the California Architectural Review Board. A designer is a person with taste. That's just kind of being coy about it, but really there is no legal definition for what a designer is and is not. And then if you're an interior designer, there's an organization called IIDA, and they would actually, they're a certified board that oversees certification of interior designers. So a licensed interior designer has one skill set, a licensed architect has another, and then a designer is sort of this vague thing in the middle that is attractive, and I think people that haven't gone to school for it can use it a little too loosely, but really that's kind of the difference.
Got it. So now you have your firm. How do you most commonly? How do you find clients? How do clients find you? I guess.
Yeah, well, we are pretty much hopefully in the tail end of COVID. Really, most of our business is local word of mouth. We tend to get referrals more than anything. We've done a couple, magazine, and we've been published a couple times, but I can't think of a single call that's come from. I've had maybe a couple calls from like San Francisco Magazine and in a book, but other than that, it's generally, you should call Julie, she'll be able to kind of set you in the right direction kind of thing. And oftentimes I'll meet with people and then years go by before we actually get the call back. So it's just about, I'm on a couple boards in my local community. For me, it's about, just sort of staying true to the local environment, and people eventually will find me.
So someone does find you. Let's say I'm gonna renovate my house or my kitchen, or I have a new build. Where are they typically in the journey? Are they like, oh, I have this idea, I think I want to renovate? Are they a little further along? Like, what do they say to you? Where are they?
Yeah, so I would say, there's lots of different answers to that, but more often than not, possibly because I have younger kids in the community, is I get families with real issues with their homes. They either just purchase them and they're not big enough, or they're having a third child and there's no extra bedroom. So, generally I get calls from people that say, we just bought this house. We spent a fortune. It is not sufficient for our needs today and in the long term. And then what we do is basically advise them in terms of a global master plan, right? Because not every project can do everything they want to do all at once. Often real people have little pots of money over time. So we try to get to the end goal of like look, this is what could be. It's really a schematic design master plan. And then they kind of chew off what they're able to do when they're able to do it. And, it's interesting. Marin County, a lot of the housing stock was built in a certain period of time, often very quickly, and often of a very similar aesthetic. And so I joke that as long as the housing stock is what it is in Marin, I'll always have a job. I mean, they're just really quirky buildings on quirky non-compliant lots, on steep lots, illegal roadways sometimes, right? So there's just a lot of, need out there. And generally speaking, everything is a remodel. It can be a major remodel, but there just isn't a lot of land here available. Yeah. So generally, we go from minor to major remodels and renovations. Core business.
And do you find that when you first? So I assume your first meeting with someone is at their house, since
yeah.
They don't want to see your office. They want you to show you where they live and what they want to change. What do they usually do? Do you feel like most people? What do they present you with? Do they just show you their house and tell you their issues? Do they bring something written? And what's the most helpful to you?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I meet at their house. They walk me through the house and kind of what their issues are. And I do think being a parent, a wife, a mom now has made me a better architect, because oftentimes I see how they live, the flow of their home, and sometimes what they ask me for is not what I'm always going to present to them. I'm very particular about like flow and space and how we live gracefully from one room to the other. And I'm also big on flexible spaces. We don't have a lot of square footage in the housing stock in the Bay Area. And so being really efficient with, multi-use rooms is often something people don't even know is a possibility. And then you say, oh, well, this spare bedroom can also be X, Y, Z. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, okay. Well, then maybe we don't need an addition. Maybe we can just live with, what we have and, do a window bench or, whatever it is. But generally speaking, the first thing they say is, welcome, I'm sorry, this place is a mess. And then like...
I feel like I say that to anyone who steps in my house, even if it's not an architect. Even if I've just cleaned, isn't that the default? I'm sorry, my house is a mess. Exactly. Why do we as women feel like we have to say that? No man would say that.
You're so right. You're absolutely so right. But it is the reality of our lives, right? Particularly for, women who have children. And to be honest with you, my clients are by and large women. I mean, yeah. I work, they are the decision makers of the process. Typically, the husbands just don't have the bandwidth to take that on, and the women have more interest in doing it.
Plus, we're better multitaskers. I mean, that's why this 100%. See Jane Build is for women, because we know that it's the woman who takes this on more so than the man.
That's exactly right. And I can't tell you, I have worked with other clients who have said, I got these kitchen plans from such and such, and, what do you think of them? And right away, I'll say to myself, these were done by a man. These plans were done by somebody who is not actively in a kitchen
cooking
with kids doing homework at the bar and a dog barking, right? I just see it right away with flow, and sometimes architects, good or bad, have sort of overarching, I'm not really thinking of the right word, but they have kind of a mission for just design at all levels without, fashion over function kind of thing. But you really have to strike a balance of that and have spaces work for women. I mean, women really are running these homes. They're the project managers of the home, right? They're kind of the CEO of Corey Incorporated or whatever family, and they need to be supported.
100%. Do you find that anyone do people give you a written document or a written list, or has anyone given you like an actual creative brief about like, here's what's working in my house, here's what's not working? Because it's something I really encourage people to do, because then they can get clear before they even meet with an architect about what's working and what's not working. But I'll also say, I kind of think about it also in terms of like photos of hair. When you bring a hairstyle to your hairstylist and you're like, oh, I love this, I want this. Well, you want what it makes you feel. You want pieces of it because of how it works, but you're not going to be able to get like, oh, I need an extra bedroom, or oh, I need whatever. So it's sort of like this finesse.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I would say that's true. I mean, my clients tend to be either one of two categories. One category is we bought the house 10 years ago, our kids have just left, we have done nothing because we knew we would do kind of a big two at some point, and they have had years and years and years to stew over it and are highly organized and come to me like just ready. And then the other is sort of the family new to the area. The housing market is pretty terrible where we live. Things are not great and they're overpriced. And so they just get frustrated sometimes and just buy the ninth house that they finally want, right? And then I get the call, which is like, well, this isn't our dream home, but these are the things that we recognize it's deficient in, and they want to kind of just get those things fixed, right? So, it really is both. But I think the more people can pin and organize their thoughts and really, I mean, because good architects are intuitive. I can look at, a dozen pins from Pinterest, walk a home and see a list of what they're telling me. And you have, in an hour visit, a very good idea of who they are, how they live, what style suits them. And it makes all the difference in the world, because once people are actually in the process and paying hourly fees for support, the quicker you can get from A to B, the more money you're going to have for customers and cabinets and wonderful flat, right? All the things that we love and appreciate. So you can never be too prepared for that initial meeting. I just don't, I can't stress that enough. It's super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. My husband made fun of me when we built a house in Long Island, and I would draw out how I thought it should look. And he's like, no, no, that's what the architect's for. And I was like, yes, I know, but the more I can show the architect what we like and the pictures and I had all these lists but it really helped. I mean, we went from not owning a piece of land to having a fully functional house in a year.
That's great.
So,
Awesome.
granted, it was an easy area of the country where it didn't take forever to get permits, but it worked. So,
Great, great.
you've had a meeting, you've walked through, you get a little sense. What's involved in putting together a proposal for someone? And how does it work? How do you tend to charge a homeowner? Is it always the same? I mean, not always the same cost, but always the same format, or how do you sort that piece out?
Yeah, I mean, there's different contracts that can be offered. The contract we use the most, with maybe a little bit of exception. We've done a little bit of commercial work here and there, but for a residential project, kind of akin to what we're talking about, um, the way we charge is that we charge an hourly rate with kind of a guaranteed maximum price, right? So, in other words, we'll say to a client, look, this is our cap. Right. This is kind of the cap price, and that number is what we try to improve upon through the four different phases of the project. So, what I tell clients is like going back to being prepared. If you have the knowledge about, kitchen countertops, right? That there are, say, four different major options for kitchen countertops: granite, marble, concrete, and sort of man-made tiles, or whatever it is. By the time you engage an architect, you're pretty familiar. You've narrowed it down to quartzite. And so then the architect can say, look, these are some great yards that are going to have really good selection. Do you want to go on your own? Because if you do, that's an hour of my time I don't have to charge you for, right? So it basically cues people up to take on as much or as little as they want to do. Some owners, particularly families that are both working, just don't have that bandwidth, right? They want full service. You pick the marble slab for them, send them pictures, and go, right? That's, I would say, it's kind of 50-50, depending on who the client is. But
So
what's
in
nice
that
about the
sense,
max is that people feel a little bit more in control of their money, right? And they understand that an hour of my time is an hour of my time. It's very clear and transparent to everybody. So we've kind of stuck with that model really since the beginning.
and what happens if you feel like you're giving more time than the cap?
Well,
You
really good
just suck it up,
question.
or like
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can actually think of one project where it kind of came into play, and it was really only toward the end of the project. And the primary driver for that particular project is it was a low cost project, and we got stuck at the planning department at no fault of our own. So what ended up happening is we ended up just burning more in a particular phase of the project than was rational. And so what happens toward the end of the project, right, is like the cap is like some phases you go under, some go over. We went over so much. Again, it was a planning issue. We ended up winning. They misinterpreted one of their own planning rules, and I had to write a letter and bring it to the head planner, and it was just kind of a mess. But he ultimately said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. This was wrongly interpreted by your staff,